Good morning and welcome to our live talk program. This is Lloyd Grubb here, your host on Revive Reform Radio, doing our live talk program covering natural health on this year Wednesday morning, rise and shine and give God the glory. And this morning here, we're looking at a topic: what happens when evil prevails? What happens when evil prevails? So very important health talk here, our philosophy that I'll be sharing with you. So welcome again. Hopefully you had a blessed night rest, and if not, or you did, I pray that you maybe have a blessed day. Let's pray. Our Father who art in heaven, we thank thee for your love. We pray your blessings, dear Lord, upon each and every one of us here. May you bless our minds and our bodies. And may you continue to guide us as the best way to take care of our health and to be very aware of what's going on in our surroundings and in the political and in all aspect, in the social aspect of our lives. May you be with us, we pray, for Christ's sake. Amen. So, very important idea here that I want to share, important in my mind at least. This idea here of what happens when evil prevails. And this is an important philosophy that goes something like this, that it's important for you to be aware what's going on around you and when evil prevails. Because when evil prevails, that there's something that's happening, and it could be something that's happening in our nature, that evil won out. It could be something happening in our water system, in the food. There's an additive that somebody been fighting to have approved, and they finally got it approved. And when you find out what it is, you find out that it's very dangerous, cancer-causing, other type of neurological damage to the body. And it's important for you to know, so you know what is being put in and what you should avoid. If you don't know this, then what it is that the evil that prevailed, you are not aware. And then if you're not aware, then you get affected by it. And so there's always these legislations, or always a social trend that is happening that everybody might find, oh, this is great. This social trend is excellent, but it is simply an evil that is prevailing, and it will have negative impacts upon you. So I'm going to talk about this in general, and I have two articles to share with you that touches on these points. And so as you interact in life, you have to know, how did this come about? You know, how does NutraSweet or aspartame, how do they come about? What was the process that got them approved as food? And then when you understand that process, you understand how this basically idea that I'm talking about here, what happens when evil prevail and who is behind it. And when you start finding out who is behind it, you start seeing the same host of evildoers that push forward these things to damage their own fellow citizens. That's not their intention, at least, but the end result is that. But they get a lot of money, and they become famous, and they become looked upon as phenomenally good at what they do, because they're able to get things that are mind-blowingly evil to be put upon their society. You look at civil wars or any of these type of stuff, they're often evil prevail. Somebody's winning, but they win at the death and destruction of their own fellow citizens. So there's a lot of social trends, as I say, that goes on, that becomes part of our culture, become cultural icons, and they become normal in the culture, that people think, oh, it's normal. This is normal thing to do. This is part of the culture. But it is something that is become normal, but it's a normal evil, because evil prevail. So important. And I always notice that when you're dealing, especially when you're dealing with a young person, young people tend to be more susceptible to when evil prevail, because for them, they're coming up at whatever age and whatever time where the evil is normal. I don't want to say that again. A young person comes up at an age and a time when whatever evil has prevailed is become normal. So in their mind, they never even heard any against argument, because the arguments were made a generation before. And so all they know is this is normal behavior. And they think, oh, this is normal. So for them, we do it this way, because they have no history on how things came about. And so for them, they're living, wallowing, they're in the septic system, they're in the swamp, and they're swimming the swamp and say, oh, it's beautiful today in the swamp. Only to realize, they never realize, only for you to realize that, wow, they're comfortable in the pig pen. And they feel very comfortable. And it's like you say, a generation before, people would never feel comfortable in that pig pen. but now you are because you've grown up in it. So this is what's fascinating, and that's what I want to explore with you this morning here. How not to wallow in that pig pen, in that swamp, and thinking it's normal, it's fresh water. But that's what's happening amongst us. And what's worse, when you see an older person that wallows in it and seem to be unaware or don't care. So we start off this morning by, I'm going to go, again, as I usually do, I go to a text and I read this text here. And we start off the day this way. In Romans chapter 1, verse 28 through 32, it says, as even they did not like, Romans chapter 1, verse 28 onward, as even they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a reprobate mind to do those things which are not convenient. So I want to say this time. God giving them over to a reprobate mind. So when you deal with a person that is given over to a reprobate mind, it is mind-blowing how they can take something that, as I say, is a pig pen and be comfortable in it. And that's just the reality. Given over, that means they see nothing wrong with this or that or the other. It's all good. And they start wallowing. And so when a person is given over to that experience, now imagine their children now coming up in the home where they're in charge of. That child coming up will look at you and like, what's the big deal? This is normal. And it's for them, everything can be chemical based. And that child is coming down with all kind of diseases at 10, 12, 6. And you say, oh man, how can this child come down with this disease so young? Because the parents are in a different mindset. They see like everything is an open spigot to every industrial chemical that's there, to every fake and cheap food that exists. And as I say, this is more not just on a health plane, this is on a moral plane. But, morality and health, it's all the same, if you understand. So verse 29 says, being filled with all unrighteousness. So there you have it. See, unrighteousness is just not doing right, practicing evil. So it is just, the person just get used to it. Just you drink Kool-Aid and never think about it. You ever think, what is that chemical? What does it do to the liver and the kidney? How does it react in the body? Just suck it down and never think about it, because that's normal. Now, if you had brought up on orange juice and then you drink that and say you have an allergic reaction, you'd be like, whatever. But that child could be having asthma, some bronchial problem, some liver problem, kidney problem, and just think, that's just my lot in life. Never thought that, wait a minute, this is different. I have a different experience here, because they never experienced anything different. But what it is, that's when evil prevails. So being filled with all unrighteousness, fornication, that's important, keep that in mind for our second article. Wickedness, covetousness, maliciousness, full of envy, murder, debate, deceit, malignity, whisperers, backbiters, haters of God. Keep it in mind also, very important for this discussion, haters of God. This has become a mark of our modern generation, or the generation, I guess, that is my age and younger. It's a mark of them. They tend to go out of the way to make sure that everybody understand they don't even like the concept of God, and they think Christians are fools. So and you watch them burning out and shooting themselves in the head, but they hate God and they hate anybody that's righteous. Despiteful, proud, boasters, inventors of evil things, disobedient to parents, without understanding, covenant breakers, without natural affection, implacable, can't be, no matter what you do, you never satisfy them, can't be placated. Unmerciful, who know in the judgment of God that they which commit such things are worthy of death, not only do the same, but have pleasure in them that do them. So this is where the Bible described to us very importantly. So when we talk about what happens when evil prevails, at this point the person is giving over. They won. The devil won. And now, you name it, they do it. And it is important to know when you have a person like this, literally, they have all these problems and nothing you can do because God can't save them. And so, you as a human being, you go ahead and try. It's going to be a waste of time. So, this is what's happening. And when you see this, you see this is where we're going and where there's no stopping the society in unrighteousness. Because when evil prevails and somebody won, then that's a powerful statement. Now look at this here. First little sharing here that I have, and this is from USA Today and written by Zati Mayer, and it's entitled "Missouri becomes first state in U.S. to regulate use of the word meat." So Missouri, this state, is the first state in the United States to regulate the word meat. On Tuesday, Missouri became the first state in the country to have a law on the book that prohibits food makers to use the word meat to refer to anything other than animal flesh. This takes aim at manufacturers of what has been dubbed fake or non-traditional meat. Clean meat, also known as lab-grown meat, is made of cultured animal tissue cells, while plant-based meat is generally from ingredients such as soy, tempeh, seitan. The state law forbids misrepresenting a product as meat that is not derived from harvesting, production, livestock, or poultry. Violators may be fined $1,000 and imprisoned for a year. A similar argument is unfolding on the federal level. The meat substitute market is expected to reach $7.5 billion plus globally by 2025, up from $4.2 billion in last year, according to the Allied Market Research. Missouri Cattlemen's Association, which worked to get the state law passed, has cited shoppers' confusion and protecting local ranchers as reasons for legislation. The big issue was marketing with integrity and consumers knowing what they're getting, said Missouri Cattlemen's Association spokesman Mike Darin. There's so much unknown about this. The bill was signed into law by Governor Eric Gretchen on June 1st. And I paused there because remember this governor recently had to be removed or removed himself out of office because of a lot of the indiscretion. On Monday, the company that makes tofurkey filed an injunction in a Missouri federal court to prevent enforcement of the statute, alleging that the state has received no complaints about consumers but befuddled by the term plant-based meat, and that preventing manufacturers from using the word is a violation of their First Amendment rights. Plus, it points out meat as referring to edible parts of nuts and fruit. As you know, they'll say the meat of a mango or the coconut meat. Keep reading. That's me just here throwing that in. The statute prevents the sharing of truthful information and impedes competition, according to the document filed in the U.S. District Court for the Western District of Missouri. The marketing and packaging of plant-based products reveal that plant-based food producers do not mislead consumers but instead distinguish their product from the conventional meat product simply by saying plant-based meat. The co-plaintiff is the Good Food Institute of Washington, D.C. based advocacy group. Darin said it was surprised by the suit because the primary target of the law was lab-grown meat. Tofurkey's main ingredient is the first two syllables in its name, tofu. In June, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration announced that it would regulate lab-grown meat. traditionally animal protein, are the jurisdiction of U.S. Department of Agriculture. Ernest Baskin, assistant professor of food marketing at St. Joseph University, said consumers use the word meat when applied to non-animal protein as shortcut to understand how they eat the food they see on the supermarket shelf. There's a segment of consumers that doesn't have to eat alternative products but want to, he said. In those cases, putting those options together in front of a consumer gives them the thought that, hey, maybe these two are similar, maybe I can substitute. So that's what's going on here. Now, that to me is, I know it's part of what's going on here is that the Cattlemen Association of Missouri, they're trying to protect their market. But what they're trying to do while protecting their market, they say they're trying to protect it from lab-grown animals. But the lab-grown meat that they're trying to protect from at this point is coming up. But the bigger threat and the bigger hit that they're receiving is from the substitute, the plant-based substitute. I think Tofurky was right to go ahead and push this lawsuit to stop them from doing this, number one. The other thing that is here is that the sad reality, and the two articles I'm going to share push these two reality, that the area of the country that is in more need of plant-based substitute, it would be in that Missouri area, Midwest, the East, South, that area of the country, that little band, which I'm going to talk about with the next article. And it is that area that they're protecting their industry, but they can switch to something else. But it's the area that needs those plant-based products. So just imagine you could be in a zone, and the government in the zone is having legislation and doing regulations, passing regulations that is going to affect you negatively. Yes, the cattleman will have a job, but they themselves need to eat some more plant-based food. And that's where the problem is, when you look at simple things like this, how legislation could be passed that affect a community that is in need of what it is. You're protecting industries that don't need no protection because they're hurting the general community. So yes, they're going to be able to make money, but at what cost? What is it that they're doing? You're making all that money, but the people are so sick and they're in need of more plant-based food because of the obesity epidemic and other diseases that are going on in the area. Now, even the word meat can be troublesome in the sense of, as I say, when you think about meat normally is referred to as the edible part of any food, plant-based food. So, or you have the meat. So normally you have the shell or the skin, and then you have the seed, and then normally everything else is the meat. That's just normally how you refer to it, is that part that you eat. Also, the Bible uses the same language. The King James Version, that's the language that is used to describe plants, edible plants, or the fruit of the plant, I should say. And normally we think fruit of the plant, we're really thinking about, not, as I say, most of the time, not the seed or the skin, but the meat, the succulent part of the plant. I'll read it for you here in Genesis 1:29. And it says, and God says, behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed, which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree in the which is the fruit of the tree yielding seed. To you it shall be for meat. I understand that primarily is talking about the fruit that you eat, that is supposed to be your meat. But the fruit in general could be rice. Rice would be looking general. Now we say fruit, we're normally talking about apples and pears and banana. That is fruit. But when we think about fruit, we normally can add to that is the fruit is whatever the offspring, the fruit of the plant, the offspring of the plant. And so eggplant can be classified as a fruit, tomato is a fruit in general, flaxseed is a fruit, is whatever the plant produces. and those can be viewed as meat also. Bible refers to them as this should be your meat. In other words, this should be your food. That's what Moses is trying to clarify to people who are living in the flesh pots of Israel. So to me, it's a comparison. So here you have it to me that Moses would be the first person to clarify this, that here are people who are not vegetarian, they're plant-based, they're meat-based eaters coming from Egypt. And he's saying when God originally created the world, he's instructed them that God created man to have a plant-based diet and a fruit-based diet, and that was man's meat. So to me, Moses is implying here that we're going to put you, and Moses did put them on a meat-based, according to the instruction of God. God gave man as Israeli God, but anyhow, Moses put them on a plant-based diet, and their meat at that point was something that's similar to like a coriander seed, manna, and then later on God put them on a 100% plant-based diet. So when you look at it, that was their meat, or in other words, that was their food. So the word meat there is important because if you have people coming from a flesh pot diet and you're going to switch them, you tell them what the substitute is. Just think about whatever you're going to eat, that's meat. And they'll be like, okay, I got that. So I don't see the problem in saying a plant-based meat. That's just simply saying, you eat your burger, in that burger, you're going to substitute out something that's made with black beans. And you now have a black bean burger or a veggie burger. It's still a burger because the burger is, question, what is a burger? Is a burger something where it's two buns with a meat in the middle? And so then the question, if it's a plant-based meat, is it a burger? So when you have a legislation like this, basically trying to limit people viewing, and especially notice the article saying they're going after the people who are not necessarily want to or have to eat plant-based, but people who it doesn't really matter. If it's a substitute, they'll just try it. And if they try it and they like it, they could be won over. That's the people they want to stop. Because again, somebody who decide I'm going to go plant-based, okay, they're going to do it anyhow. But they're trying to stop the consumer who will go into the store, see a veggie burger or a soy or tofu burger or whatever, and they say, oh, plant-based meat. And they say, okay, let's try it. And they try it. If they like it now, they're going to probably cut back on the amount of Cattlemen's Association product, amount of cows and poultry they eat. So they want to stop that customer, which makes sense. The one that is more, they could go either way, so to speak. And they're not really going it because probably they feel it's healthy or whatever. They're just going it because they're looking for a substitute. So when you do that now, it's that customer goes in there and they don't get it doesn't click, so to speak, in the mind that, oh, you could use this burger as meat. That person keep eating meat. So when that happens, you have less converts. But the problem is, in our society, with the amount of cancers, the amount of diabetes, the amount of high blood pressure and coronary artery diseases, the amount of obesity, it is needed for there to be more plant-based substitute for everything. More substitute for egg, for milk, for ice cream, for various different type of meats, because the less fat, the less disease in the animal is, the better it is for the person eating. Because at that point, if the person have a more plant-based diet or a plant-based diet, all they have to do is exercise self-control, and that will help them along. So it's important. But here you have legislation and the cattlemen working to do what? What are they going to accomplish? Okay, they keep more cows being slaughtered, but how does that help the Missourians? How does that help the people from Missouri and in the country at large? I don't see what they're doing is not a positive move. Might be a financial move, but not a positive move. The country need to eat less animals, and that's what needs to happen. And so this here is what's happening. Now I want to read this text to you, and as I said, this text here, I'm going to first go to this one here, Leviticus chapter 26, verse 31 through 39. And it says here, Leviticus 26, verse 31 through 39. And it says, and I will make your cities waste, and I will bring your sanctuaries into desolation. And I will not smell the savor of your sweet odor. So this is the Lord here speaking to Israel. And this is what happened to Israel because of the rebellion of Israel. Now, this is important because as we see right now, even the whole idea of what the experiment with this current President Donald Trump, is all about is to try to save America. This has been prominent, I think, in politics when the first time Barack Obama ran. And if I'm getting this, when he ran the first time, the question was, remember, America was just experiencing a financial crash after President Bush. And the country was in trouble then. And although we've been out of a financial crash, and we've been in an upward movement for the last 10 years of the Dow Industrial, of the NASDAQ, of the various different stock markets, the country still seemed to be in a problem. And the problem, as I would note, is a moral problem. And there's things that's being done to push the country in one direction or another, multiple directions. But the question, or the issue at hand, is what's going on. Because you see there's a problem, and there's some solutions on the ground to fix the problem. So there's no question there's a problem, and there's solutions being put forward to how to pull the country out of the direction it's going. Now, notice I mentioned about how you could have the situation with the Cattlemen Association. They're having a financial slide, and they're trying to stop the financial slide, the loss of money. But the bigger issue going on, is it the bigger issue that we need to protect the Cattlemen Association, or the bigger issues in America is that part of the financial problem is the health of the country that is wreaking havoc on the financial base of America, because so much of the citizens are sick because of the diet and lifestyle. So that's where the problem is. What exactly needs to be done? Because something is being done. As you know, the big focus right now to fix America, make America great again, is to stop the immigration problem, to stop the illegal immigration. And so something is being done, but the question is, what is eating away at the country? Because the country is doing good. I think the Dow Jones is up again this week or last week. So money is flowing. But is that going to stop the problem? And that's where the issue comes in. What is the bigger issue? And as I say, we're talking about health. One of the big issues is this health problem. And if you don't deal with this health problem, what's going to happen is the country is going to keep sliding, because the more sick people you have, it's going to be a problem. And the next article is very important to that, because remember, the baby boomers now are getting older, and they're rusting up. The rate of rust is massive. It's rapid. The decline is unbelievable because the lifestyle is unbelievable. And yet we have a problem with the young people. While the old people are getting rusted out, and their knees and their hips have to be replaced, and all that's going on, the young people now are popping off with all kind of problems. And yet, the focal point is that we need to stop the illegal immigration. And that might be a solution to the problem. Nothing is off the table when you're trying to fix problems, right? So you put everything on the table. But there's some things that I see that are massive that nobody's really talking about. And here we have these people talking about they need to stop the bleed because they're losing money. But the people are sick. So notice here it says that, when Israel rebel, bad things are going to happen. Notice here is I will bring the land into desolation, verse 32, and your enemies which dwell therein shall be astonished at it. And I will scatter you among the heathen, and I will draw out a sword after you, and your land shall be desolate and your cities wasted. Then shall the land employ her Sabbaths. As long as it light desolate, yea, it shall yea, be in your enemies, and even then shall the land rest and enjoy her Sabbaths. As long as it light desolate, it shall rest, because it did not rest in your Sabbaths when you dwell upon it. And upon them that are left alive of you, I will send a faintness in their heart in the land of their enemies, and the sound of a shaking leaf shall chase them, and they shall flee as fleeing from a sword, and they shall fall when none pursue it, and they shall fall upon another, as it were before a sword, when none pursue it, and ye shall have no power to stand before your enemies. And ye shall perish among the heathen, and the land of your enemies shall eat you up, and they that are left of you shall pine away in their iniquity in your enemy's land, and also in the iniquity of their fathers shall they pine away, or pine with them, away with them. So here's described a very sad scenario that happened to Israel. You know, the 10 tribes of Israel ultimately were taken captive and scattered, and literally this happened to them, and there was no deliverance because they pined away literally in their iniquities. And as they pined away in iniquities, they never got rescued back. You know, think about it, they never got rescued or returned back to land. They were forever gone from the land. Literally this happened to Israel. And as you see what's going on, you see that, you know, prosperity without morality, it doesn't work. Because what it is that if you notice, there's so much constantly, even amongst religious folks, suicides, astonishment of heart, which is anxiety attacks. All that stuff is happening, as I covered yesterday, if you listen to yesterday's program. And we see this constantly on the rise, because many times these are people with phenomenal money. So they some of them are poor, living in, you know, ghettos, trailer parks. Some are rich, and it doesn't matter. There's no difference, because the person have an astonishment of heart. They have despair, depression, because it's immoral. Like I said before earlier, you have a person who believe that there's no God. They're rude. They're obnoxious with it. They're disrespectful. They're irreverent, and next thing you know, they kill themselves. And you'd be like, okay, I guess you won. I don't know what you won. And that's become now the norm. Immorality is causing people to pine away in their sins and in their despair. So I go to the second article, which I guess illustrates the point more succinctly of what's going on inside of America. So this is an article that came out yesterday. And it says, STD continue rapid rise in U.S., setting new record, CDC says. This is from USA Today, Linda Carroll. Sexually transmitted disease are on the rise in America, according to new data from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. In fact, nearly 2.3 this is from NBC News. Nearly 2.3 million cases of chlamydia, gonorrhea, syphilis were diagnosed in the U.S. in 2017, surpassing the record set in 2016 by more than 200,000, CDC scientists reported on Tuesday. Experts say many factors have contributed to the rapid rise, though the biggest one may be less frequent condom use. It's less clear whether dating apps like Tinder have contributed to in some way to the spread of STDs, though some researchers think they have. We have seen steep and sustained increases over the last 5 years, Dr. Gail Boland, director of the Division of STD Prevention at the CDC. Usually, there are ebbs and flows, but this sustained increase is very concerning. We haven't seen anything like this for 2 decades. In the past, the majority of syphilis infections were seen in gay men, bisexual men, and other men who have sex with men. Strange. Boland told NBC News. More recently, there have been increases among heterosexual men and women, including among pregnant women, which means we're starting to see those infections in their babies. Boland and others suspect that newer drugs have made HIV less lethal, as well as one that lowers the risk of being infected, could have contributed to declines in condom use. An Australian study that followed nearly 17,000 gay and bisexual men before and after a campaign to promote pre-exposure prophylaxis, the use of a drug that protects against HIV infection, found that condom use had fallen dramatically. Before the campaign, 46% of men studied were using condoms. After, 31% were. Certainly, we've known since life-saving HIV medication became available in 2000s, things changed, Boland says. Added to that was the very important advance of HIV prevention. But those tools don't prevent STDs. Now we're seeing decline use of condom, not just in gay and bisexual men, but also in heterosexual. CDC researchers found that gonorrhea diagnoses increased by 67% from 333,000 to 55,600 in just 5 years. The sharpest increase was in men, in whom cases nearly doubled, going from 169,130 to 322,169 in 2017. Though increases were also seen in women, they weren't quite as dramatic, rising 18% over the same period of time. So most of this is happening in male. Another factor driving the skyrocketing number of STD cases may be a decline in funding for state and local agencies working on prevention, says Michael Fraser, Executive Director of the Association of State and Territorial Health Office. We have seen a tremendous increase in many areas, primarily due to eroding public health infrastructure. The lack of funding of state and local level really invest in prevention work is not just about medication. It's about disease investigators who meet with the individual who is infected and talk about their behavior and do contact tracing to try to prevent future spread. And you know what contact tracing is? They try to figure out, say, how many partners the person had this year and kind of track them down so you can start to get a better picture and help out those who probably are infected. So contact tracing in the future. So sorry here. It says the United States continue to have the highest STD rates in the industrialized world. So keep that in mind because we're going to come back to that. Highest STD rates in the industrial world is in the United States, says Dr. Harvey. Although with decline in funding, there are other factors driving the skyrocketing STD rates, Harvey said. There is an extreme lack of awareness about STDs and sexual health, he said. The doctors are not screening and testing for these diseases, and patients don't know they need to ask to be tested. One of Boland's biggest concern is antibiotic-resistant strains of gonorrhea. Currently, some strains are susceptible to only one antibiotic. The history of gonorrhea is that every time we are down to one antibiotic, it mutates. She added, it's hard to think back to the era of having no treatment for bacteria. Syphilis diagnosis, which rose by 76% from 17,357 to 30,644, were mostly in men. Syphilis in women is especially concerning because it can have a major effect on developing fetuses. In the mid 20th century, studies showed that 40% of fetuses born to mothers infected with syphilis were either stillborn or died shortly after delivery. But that was before the advent of penicillin. She added, "We don't have current data on the impact of fetal syphilis. In our country, stillbirths are undercounted. We are now trying to educate providers to understand that in the case of any stillbirth, the mother needs to be tested for syphilis." The chlamydia rate held relatively steady, more than 1.7 million cases diagnosed in 2017, just a few percentage point above where it was in 2013. Nevertheless, the chlamydia rate is worrisome because the disease can scar a woman's reproductive organ and leave her infertile. Chlamydia and gonorrhea are most common in young people ages 15 through 24, Boland said. Remember that number. Children, young people 15 through 24 mostly have chlamydia and gonorrhea. Not all of them, I'm just saying in what the disease that they mainly have. STDs are widespread and cross urban and rural boundaries, Boland says. The cross socioeconomic boundaries, we're seeing STD in places we haven't seen before. One big problem, all the STDs can be asymptomatic, Boland said. So it don't come up immediately, no symptoms. The numbers presented by the CDC may not be quite as alarming as they sound. Certainly the numbers are increasing, but some of the increase may be due to the fact that we are doing more testing. The more you look, the more you find. Also, they are now using a more sensitive test for chlamydia and gonorrhea. Gados also believe that the breakthrough in HIV treatment and prevention has unintended consequences of driving an increase in other STDs. Part of the problem is that people are not afraid of dying from HIV now, so they are less likely to use condoms, and they are more likely to have multiple partners. It's also quite likely that apps like Tinder have helped drive up the rates of STD, Gados said. It's easier to find partners with the dating app partners. She explained, people can find partners and they don't even need to know their names, plural names. New rapid STD tests that are in the clinical trial now may help stem the tide. That way we can treat people before they leave the clinic. Many don't come back. If we could do a rapid test, we could treat them before they left and eliminate future spread. So that's the article there. So this is another thing that's going on. Remember, we're talking about here what happens when evil prevails. So you see a trend happening. You see a certain psychology or psyche taking hold of a community. You see it, you hear it, and then a few years later, you see the results are coming in. As I say, they have a 4-year constant rise, non-stop rise. Now, the rise in syphilis, as I've covered here multiple times, is particularly troubling, and the rise in gonorrhea. It's particularly troubling because there's strands or strains of the syphilis that is, and gonorrhea especially, that is drug resistant. And there's certain strands that only respond to now only one drug. If that drug goes and it becomes a significant number of that gonorrhea spreading, it's gonna be massive. All right. Now remember I said that to keep in mind that the age group that is being affected particular they have a rapid rise to especially chlamydia and gonorrhea, is the age group between 15 and 24. Now, this is significant, as you know, because this is that age group that is also shooting up the place. All right? That late teens, early 20s. And that's the age group that's coming up that what you would normally, how would I say, argue against, talk against, there's no arguments going on amongst them. It's just normal. If I say to adults, and to an adult person in their probably late 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, that have you heard about this app called Grinder or Tinder? They'll be like, what is that? But imagine you're growing up in a world that's just one of the other apps on your phone. And instead of you hearing about, let's say you're a guy, because most of this is guys. Say instead of a guy hearing about a girl that is easy or a guy that is homosexual, you can just go in this app and put in a 5-mile radius and find out all the people who are looking for sex and looking for grinding in a 5-mile radius. You don't have to ask nobody. You don't have to go find out himself. You can just go and find out who are those people. And then they all can find each other. And it can be just one big orgy. This is what's happening in our society. And then now they're telling the young people, which is a mistake. They're saying that, which they believe it, but they're saying that you can take a drug and you don't have to use a condom, or you don't have to practice safe sex, or you don't have to get married. You can just go and sleep around, and you take this drug and it will protect you from the disease. And we have a medicine to, if you do get chlamydia, gonorrhea, syphilis, we can hit you and we good. The problem is, as I say, is that the disease are morphing, they're mutating, they're changing their form and their location. And I'm putting my understanding on the line and say that that same AIDS that they're saying that they can prevent and that they've cured, it will morph, and it is morphing, and it will change and become a monster. It's just a matter of time. It's a matter of will it happen. It's a matter of time. And those same young people are growing up now in that age group who are thinking, oh, because I hear them, they're so proud of it. They're so proud. They say, you believe in God, we believe in science, and we good. But they're going to have a rude awakening because they don't understand the principle of how those small microscopic life work, that those STDs are constantly mutating. They're constantly trying to overcome the drug. And we're not at a point where the STDs are overcoming the drugs. And they're changing. But while they're changing, their mindset is normalized into grinding and tindering. And this is where the problem is going to be. And this is why I talk about when evil prevails. When there's no more arguments anymore about is there morality, what's right or what's wrong. Because I read their art, and I've talked to them and read their statements. They're very clear that there's no who decide what's right or wrong, and there's no God, there's no morality, there's no this, there's no that. They're and arrogant about it. But what happened is that the reality is that the crazy food they're eating, that is now normal for them. It's just normal to eat a certain way, and it's normal to grind a certain way. It's causing them a lot of pain, and in high numbers, they're coming out with a lot of STDs. They're coming out with a lot of digestive problem, a lot of cancers, a lot of diabetes and coronary problem. Many of them, they're not even in their 20s and they're already obese. Why? Because what is a normal? Imagine their parents already have lost the battle personally on eating their greens and eating their veggies and their fruits. And imagine if your parents are not even eating their fruits and vegetables. They're not going to say eat your fruits and vegetables. They're going to say, man, eat all that junk and die. And this is what these kids are growing up in. It's normal. Just imagine right now in America, there's so much of the young people that are out the church. You look around and you say, well, where are the 20s and the 30-year-olds in church? They're gone. There's no talk about morality. That battle is already lost on them. And now they're bringing up young kids. What are they going to teach those young kids? They're going to teach those young kids, go bathe yourself in some chemicals, son, and enjoy the result of that. And that's what we're seeing in front of us, literally. These kids are in their single digits, their teens, and they're already coming down with all kind of cancers, all kind of stomach problems, all kind of things that you say, man, I'm reading about stuff and I'm saying, man, that's people in the 70s supposed to be coming down with those diseases. But those kids now are in their single digits and teens, and they're already coming down with their diseases. Now think about it. You look at a young person and you almost could guess chlamydia or gonorrhea or syphilis. And you say, man, but that's just a 16-year-old. That's just a 20-year-old. You're already a bag of STDs. Just going around, creeping around, just infecting other people at the prime of their life. And now it's going to struggle health-wise with years of suffering from a disease that they didn't even live yet. They didn't even start suffering from life or enjoying life. So this is what's happening. This is when evil win out. Think about it. Right in America, you go to most young people and you say creation and evolution. They say that discussion is already, I can't remember, from the 50s or 40s or so. That discussion is already finished back then. What are you talking about? There's no such thing. We evolve. We just here. We just a bunch of matter. There's no value to life. We just live and die. So the result of that is what happens when evil prevails. We see all this depression and suicide and drug use, because there's no hope for tomorrow. There's no hope for the afterlife. You just live and you die, and if this life is painful, man, just pop my brain. What's the point? There's no use to this. And that's when evil prevails. I'll read a few more texts with you here. A few more thoughts. So here in this, the Bible says, the word of the Lord came to Jeremiah. Jeremiah chapter 7, verse 1 through 12. Jeremiah 7, verse 1 through 12. The word of the word that came to Jeremiah from the Lord, saying, stand in the gate of the Lord's house and proclaim this word, and say, hear the word of the Lord, ye all ye of Judah, that enter in at these gates to worship the Lord. Thus says the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, amend your ways and your doings, and I will cause you to dwell in this land. Trust ye not in lying words, saying, the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord are these. For if you thoroughly amend your ways and your doings, if you thoroughly execute judgment between a man and his neighbor, if you oppress not the stranger, the fatherless, the widow, and shed not innocent blood in this place, neither walk after other gods to your hurt, then will I cause thee to dwell in this place, in the land that I give your fathers forever and ever. So this is significant, as you know. Over the weekend, there's another young man that went and shoot up the place in Jacksonville this time. And as I say, you could look at it, somebody could say, well, what's going on? What's happening with all these young people? Well, that's why I say when evil prevails. When it becomes just normal, a young person. Look at the high rates of young people that have a mental health problem have to be committed. And you say, well, why? Why is it so much young people being committed and having all this mental health problem, and they're hearing voices and they're going raving mad and they're just going and shooting up the place. What's going on? Well, again, you look at what has won. It's normal for them to get up and eat a diet that is just crazy, the most disease-infected, crazy animals that you can find. That's what they eat, and that's normal. It's normal for them to get up and, drink coffee, eat donut, eat bagel. It's just the diet is just so anemic and sick and affect the neurology, and that's normal for a young person. Normal for them to just drink all these type of soda and hot pockets. I always remember when I first saw the first ad for hot pockets. I was like blown away when I saw those hot pockets. I was like, man, that's like crazy. And then I didn't even understand anything about health in any significant way. And I thought I was eating a regular standard American diet. And I remember saw that and I was thinking, that got to be one of the craziest thing I see. You eat that in the in the morning? It's like just getting up and eating candy. And that's what these young people are on. You watch the craziest cartoons, the craziest movie because your parents sit there and watch the crazy movies with you. You're told there's no morality, there's no righteousness, there's no wrong and right, there's no God, there's no, you just everything socially, morally, education. You're told you're evolved, there's no value to life, there's no nothing. And then you turn around and say to that child, be normal. And that child said, Mom, I'll kill everybody. And you say, what's wrong with you? And nobody's not saying, you're being spoon-fed madness. You've been spoon-fed violent video games, competitive sport where you're competitive and you have no self-control. You're a narcissist. It's all about you. You make your parents suffer and you do everything over the top to stroke your pride and stroke your selfishness, because that's what the society is about. You think about the average parent. All they do, they stroke their kids' selfishness. It's all about the kids are the center of attention. Yeah, they basically turn the world upside down for the children. So the kids grow up. It's all about, man, if they can't get it and they can't get what they want, oh, they become destructive. This is our society. And we wonder why. As I say, what happened when evil prevailed? Well, we're seeing it. And the more they win, and the more the evil win out, is the more destructive we see the young people especially are. And the old people too. They're not too far behind. Because that's one thing I want to say with this chlamydia, syphilis, AIDS and stuff. If you look at the map, if you have time, and you go to the CDC actual report, it's a PDF report. If you scroll down long enough, you'll find a section where they show the hot areas, the areas with the highest amount of syphilis, the highest amount of chlamydia, gonorrhea, I think AIDS. You will notice that the areas are more down south. It's concentrated in some of the poorest communities. And they break it down by counties also. So you'll find whether it be the state, the poor state, have the highest rates. And the poorest counties have the highest rates. And the poorest communities have the highest rates. So it starts with African American, highest rates of STDs. I think 8 times. I could be wrong. It's very high in the black communities. The African American communities is like, it's almost if you're walking on the road and you see 10 black people, you know probably 6 of them or 7 have STD. It's unreal, the amount of STDs in the black community. And as you know, black community is probably the worst community when it comes on to monogamous relationship. The blacks don't do well with that. You see a black woman, she don't have a husband. So that's what it is. And a black guy just sleep around. So this high rates. And then you can imagine places like Georgia, like Atlanta, where it's like the homosexual capital for black people. Imagine what's going on in those areas. So that's what's happening. It's not a good, it's a horrible thing what's going on. Because if you notice, they're supposed to be more religious down south. But not so. If the level of immorality is unreal in the south, and the level of STDs and level of poverty, this all like it all merge. So imagine in the trailer parks and the ghettos, the amount of STDs floating around. So that's what's happening. So here the Bible says, will you steal, murder, commit adultery, swear falsely, burn incense to Baal, and walk after other gods to your hurt, that you know not, to your own hurt, is what I throw in there. And because of time, I realize I'm going to have to stop. I wanted to talk more about some of these texts. But this is what's happening. And as we see this, we see that, as the churches become more immoral and they do sing-along, their karaoke churches, as the people become more immoral in whatever community, whether it be the STDs or the suicide or the gang banging or the mass murders, these young people are swimming in a sea of immorality, swimming in a sea and a swamp and a pig's pen of immorality. And it's become normal for them to be hoes and for them to be, running around playing their players, and they're just picking up STDs. It's not working. Pray to God that we might stay on the straight and narrow or enter on the straight and narrow. We'll pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, we thank thee again for your word. We thank you for your salvation, your deliverance from this life. Pray, Father, that you may be with us, that we might walk humbly before thee and stay on the straight and narrow. This is my prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. Thanks for being with me on Revive Reform Radio. Looking forward to talking to you again tomorrow morning, where we should talk about current events. Until then, I pray that you may continue to walk with the King.